Hey, it is your buddy Peace and Harmony with you here today. Much love going out to all the beautiful empowered harmonizers. And I want to give a huge shout out to those of you who have recently emailed me, commented on the videos, and made donations and contributions to the channel in my brief absence. I want to give a huge shout out. Thank you so much for contacting me. And I apologize. I have, just as a quick health update, as you know, I've had this cervical collar and surgery, and in my recovery, I'm experiencing a lot of like nerve pain in the front of my neck here, which is exacerbated by speaking and moving, which I tend to do when I speak, of course. And I'm getting like muscle spasms in the back of my neck, which has been like off the charts pain-wise. So I have really needed to relax and recuperate and take it easy. As you know, I'm extremely passionate and dedicated to the channel in assisting you on a day-by-day basis to your own healing journey and pulling the pieces together in some very bewildering, confusing, and exasperating relationship issues that we discuss here on the channel, and the tools and resources we are still keeping going strong. So I just needed to take some time to get situated back with some healing. So thank you so much for your patience. And we have a lot of lost ground, or a lot of ground to cover here in terms of addressing viewer questions. So thank you so much for your recent donations. It really, and your comments, it really does inspire me to do my best and keep posting on a daily basis. So I want to give, zoom in and focus in today on a great viewer question, and that was really kind of looking at the projection, the blame shifting that we see when we're in relationships with a cluster B personality or an antisocial personality disorder, someone who is covert narcissistic or even sociopathic, psychopathic, and looking at very specifically and in depth the concept of projection, which means it is when an individual with a personality disorder, because they are not adept at working through taking responsibility and accountability for their own emotional grievances, their own emotional insecurities, their own emotional sort of weaknesses, which all people have by virtue of being human. There are going to be good days and bad days. There's going to be times of peace, harmony, feeling that you're growing, and then there's going to be feelings where you're feeling set back or feeling inadequate. But that insecurity, though, oftentimes, because the cluster B, they don't want to appear less than perfect, less than stellar, less than superior to the public world, their social network, because they feel, they're more human than human. So they always feel like they are this superhuman, montage of things that they do or say or that they represent in their own social circles. So rather than dealing with a level playing field and feeling sort of, on level or on par with other people, they instead resort to controlling and emotionally manipulating others through projection, through blame shifting. In other words, if they are feeling exhausted, they are going to point the finger at you and say, well, you seem so exhausted. You seem like you're so out of breath. You seem like you're so down. In other words, you can be sitting there peacefully, in the chair, doing your thing, minding your own business, or, they call you and then they're going to lambast you with these sort of comments or these sort of criticisms, this sort of blame shifting or projection. So it's oftentimes very directly correlated to a very specific issue that they are sensitive about within their own personality makeup, their own personality composition. So when you feel criticized, when you feel like all of a sudden, here they go again, there's a repeating pattern again and again and again with these people. And, the those individuals who don't see it coming or who don't really know that much about the personality disordered individuals, they tend to take this criticism at face value. In fact, since the cluster B personality, because they tend to try to command this superior position to all others in their social network, people oftentimes tend to take their opinion as law. They tend to take their comments as face value, as their own personal bottom line. In other words, those individuals who are caught up in being a supply or codependent tend to allow the narcissist to do the thinking for them, do the judgment for them on their own self, on their own self-worth, on their own self-value, self-esteem. They tend to then equate, rather than thinking and feeling for themselves, it really then becomes externalized by this person. In other words, another's criticism becomes your identity. It becomes the determining factor in how you feel. And then your feelings tend to get stuck on this low evaluation or get stuck on the projection. In other words, it's like looking in the mirror and saying, yep, that's me. I'm exhausted. I'm no good. I'm unattractive. I'm lazy. I can never do a good job. I can't drive a car right. I can't make a cup of coffee. I can't, I don't have the right profession. They tend to then make their own self-assessment rather than kind of thinking for themselves or being in control of themselves emotionally, which is really the bottom line, and that's the true objective and the true realization and the aha moment is when you really get a grip that when you see through the veil of this individual and their projection, their blame shifting. In other words, it has nothing to do with your own shortcoming. It has nothing to do with your own reality, but your own meaning that you take from their projection oftentimes is the key that, turns the car or you moving forward in a positive manner. When you're able to see that this is an emotionally manipulative tool that these individuals do to keep you squashed, to keep you waffled down, to keep you floundering, to keep you stuck, to keep you feeling as if you're low then and then doubting yourself, shutting you down, kicking you to the curb emotionally, making you feel less than important, less than valuable as a person. So that is their goal. And as heartless and cruel as it may seem, it is a tactic which dictators have, used through, for centuries. When you look at oppressive governments, they try to make their people feel less than. They can even starve them out physically, starve them out emotionally, keeping them oppressed. So, but what you don't realize it is in your own life that this is what occurs. And then, so this is how the identity of negative validation is, how it's formed around that treatment. And so that's how you get into the apathy, the grief, the shame, the bewilderment, the feeling less than, the feeling like, you're nobody special, that you'll never be able to trust people again because you're so been defined in such a complete manner. In other words, you have placed your own emotional value kind of reflected back by this person, which is not the case. So the goal is to let go of these feelings that were set up and defined by these past events. So it's to understand the neurology is that your mind, just how it works, it tends to like to repeat patterns. So especially when they're imbued with high emotional value or highly emotional charge. So fear can keep a pattern in place. The fight or flight or freeze mechanism, the sympathetic nervous system, everything is going into fight or flight, and you're not allowed to relax. You're not allowed to feel okay. So you're kind of in this, you're ruddered, emotionally, kind of always steering towards the negative. And so it's because it tends to perpetuate again and again, especially if you've highly valued this person, this narcissist, this psychopath, in other words, they had succeeded in having you place them up on a pedestal and superior or super important. And, they have then made this sort of configuration in the relationship. You need to dissolve that and realize kind of the mechanisms that are going forward, and to let go of the emotions and the feelings that were set up in these past events, and realize that you've perpetuated it, oftentimes by the high value that you've placed on the relationship. So in other words, you've tried to work out the relationship with them. I mean, how long have you, and this is a good question to ask yourself, how long had you tried to make the relationship work? In other words, how long had you ingested and absorbed their negative projection? How long had you absorbed their blame shifting? How long had you absorbed their toxicity and taken it as your own self-worth because you did not know better? You did not have boundaries. You did not see that this is how this dynamic was set up. So if you can answer that question, oftentimes the answer is not going to be minutes. It's not going to be, for a couple of days. Chances are it's going to be for several months, or for a lot of viewers, several years. So can you see how that would ground you down to a pulp rather than grounding you up to a magnificent person? In other words, the David of Michelangelo. When you're in worthwhile relationships, they ground you out, like bringing out the best of you. So just like Michelangelo in his sculpting of David, the beautiful, Roman Italian sculptor, he saw a slate of marble, and he said, I saw, an angel being in there, and I was just trying to release it. So that was the sculpture, the vision of what they saw in that blank piece of marble. So it's day after day, releasing that figure that the artist saw within. So that shows you the power of vision and reflection that others have of us. So we're like the blank marble. If you're around others who are trying to etch you out and carve out the negative in you, eventually they're going to form you into a monster. So it's very important to understand how this takes place and the why, because it keeps them in a superior position. Rather than earning their position, they and allowing others to coexist, they're trying to usurp others' feeling of value and self-worth by controlling them and, almost doing the thinking for you. And that is very, very dangerous, because it can create a lot of apathy and despondency in your own life. In other words, where you feel like you can't put 1 and 2 together to make 2. You can't put 1 and 1 together to make 2. You can't think for yourself. You can't think clearly. You feel sort of an apathy, which means a despondency, or like, I don't really care about anything. It's because you're not used to being connected with your solar plexus, your heart, your mind, your intuition. You have not been permitted to through the blame shifting. So you're always in a reactive state versus a proactive state. So it sets up a very problematic situation. And that's why I recommend, as one of the key tools in the recovery, is positive orderly direction thinking, or pod thinking, where you really begin to let go of the emotions that were set up in the past. So we're talking about the feelings. So really underneath every thought is a feeling. So as you can, feel yourself cringe when you think about maybe the time you have lost, or the good times that you had lost while being succumbed to projection, sabotage, gaslighting, brainwashing, all the other sundry manipulative tactics that these individuals use, the sabotaging, the scapegoating. this projection. They all are kind of in a similar, energetic control of others for, your downfall. So once you are able to separate yourself and let go of those emotions that were set up in the past, you let them go, which is an etheric exercise. It's just saying, it's realizing it comes with awareness, and realizing the why and the how and the when and the why and the who, and letting go of that. So in other words, emotionally, your emotional grip is no longer holding on to those experiences. In other words, those events. And so a lot of people ask, well, why is it so hard? And we're going to get into more of that, but it's because, it's so hard because you've repeated it. You've clenched onto this feeling. You've held onto it, and you've armored yourself to protect yourself from being alone, or, trying to, say, hey, this didn't work, or this is my family member, and this is the only relationship that I had, or this was a formative relationship. And so you have held onto it because you so valued this person, or this person was integral to your own survival and well-being. So this person had to be or was in your life for a very specific and meaningful reason. But see, that's the beauty of time and learning and these tools, even though it's so very difficult, because you've held on to it because of the value that you place in this person, and perhaps the other feelings of being without this person were so painful, and you could not begin. You could not set foot on the path of being on your own. You did not have the resources, the tools, the understanding, or the permission to give yourself that, this is, this is what is required. So it's an evolving process. Growth of consciousness is an evolving process. It takes time. Just like it's, just like you get better day by day, or things can get worse day by day. And we all have, good or bad days, but it is to let go of these previous events that's defined your emotions, separating yourself and your identity, your I am, from this emotional projection or negative manipulation of you, and to realize that this was how they got you. In other words, and to now to be able to see it coming. And how do you let go? How do you transform? How do you alchemize? Well, it is being able to breathe in the moment and realizing what is negative orderly direction thinking, or what I call NAD thinking, sending you down the slippery slope of despair, apathy, shame, bewilderment, confusion, pain, feeling less than, feeling low self-worth, that has been defined by this negative projection. Remember our analogy of the clean marble. And so it's looking at yourself as the clean marble. In other words, having compassion and unconditional love for yourself. And this sounds so easy, but it is actually, it sounds easy, but it's very difficult when you have been projected on so many times, and, you've had so many carvings out at you, emotionally, scars, emotional whiplash, emotional hits, that, you might have been physically, emotionally abused, spiritually or psychologically abused, criticized, so that you were basically rendered helpless, learned helplessness. We've discussed in previous videos. And so it's important to learn about this, but to separate and then have compassion with yourself and saying, okay, that is why it's so important for me to take care of myself with kid gloves. It's so important for me to get back into the heart, which is the seat of your emotions, and get out of the head, which is the analytic part of yourself, your individual being, and to get back into that heart space where you get into a feeling of flow again, and then getting back into really the positive early direction thinking, and then being able to then utilize really some very specific and basic, what I call astralmations, where you really need to get some new language patterns going on, an inner dialogue going on within yourself. And keeping it very, very simple, but very profound, and working on this repeatedly and over and over and over again, so that your feelings begin to get a sort of feeling of relief. In other words, so that of freedom, and then being out of the emotional grips of this projection, out of the emotional grips of this scapegoating. I mean, it's a very real thing. So that's why it's important for a lot of people to go no contact, to get some space, to be able to get control of yourself emotionally, and then begin to work on what makes you happy, what is fun, what you want, a new vision for yourself, of who you are. And especially as, you're independent from this person, which can be very scary. It's difficult because it's new. It contradicts the old identity of being less than. So it's oftentimes just coming to a neutral and saying, okay, I got it now. And stating, I'm no longer controlled by the negative projection of these people. I'm not controlled by that. I have mastery over myself. It's that ownership of your own, what I call your own internal real estate. It's saying, I've got this. It's the inner work. And it's putting the emphasis and knowledge on that, and then being able to really surround yourself with those people that carve out and release that angel, magnificent angel and person within, like that blank slate of marble, that are reflecting back the positive things, feeling the positive things for yourself and life, going out step by step and engaging in what we call neuroplasticity, changing the neural wiring and firing within your brain and into the neurological pathways and highways that lead into your physicality, i.e. your muscles, so you have new muscle memory. You're doing things in a new way. Your physiology is so crucial here. It's no longer flinching and flailing every time and getting out of the reactive state that this person, every time, you might bark back, or you might, you might try to launch into defending and protecting yourself. Explaining and justifying yourself. I'm not exhausted. I'm not this. I'm not stupid. You're reacting to them, so you're giving power to them in that moment. So it's taking back. It's not giving your power to the negativity anymore. Like Oprah says, she does not care to give power to the negativity, and that's a very profound statement. And I hope that you really understand that and get that. And if you want to comment, I get it. That's a crucial thing to letting go. It's not reacting. So it's zipping the lip, keeping a stiff upper lip, not speaking the defense, but internally, your internal dialogue, in other words, not vocalizing or feeling the vocalization of your emotions. So your emotions are like the language of the body. Your emotions are the language of the subconscious. So it can show you how you can grow in awareness, because all this negativity is in the subconscious. So as you know, there's, the three brains, and the subconscious controls, 97 to 98% of who we are. I mean, it's the heartbeat, the breathing. And of course, you can imagine, this is all connected with your emotions. So it's really further defining yourself and not getting into, getting out of, oftentimes is the first step, getting out of the reactive state, and getting into the neutral state, and then the proactive state, which is very scary, because it's saying, it's like learning to ride a bike. I've never balanced myself this way before. I am magnificent. I am love. I am fearless. I am magnificent. I am inspiration. I am joyful. I accept joy. I accept positive self-worth. These are some very, very important statements that you need to make it to yourself. In other words, I care for, and love myself unconditionally, which means for sickness or for health. So, when you're there for yourself in moments of your sickness, it shows you really are stepping up to the plate. You're really stepping up to the batter's box. And that's very important. So it's very, very important exercises that really will speak volumes to your subconscious. And that's what's really driving the boat, is your subconscious. And then when you do that, you're further defined, and then your energy about you begins to get reset. And then you're then keeping your head up, and then you're realizing that you're no longer stuck in the trap of this sabotage, of this projection, of this scapegoating. You realize that this was a manipulation tactic of a cluster B, or a psychopathic individual who is telling lies. They that's what they do. So it is separating yourself and saying, thank goodness I am free from that. So oftentimes the gratitude and the awareness is what can take you through. The gratitude is so important, and to realize that you're free, because really it's almost to feel like a prisoner when you're, like you cannot liberate your own energy. And so it is giving yourself permission to feel positive and trust yourself. And then when you're able to have that trust of yourself, then you can carry that forth into your other relationships, your other experiences. Your decisions start getting better. You start having better judgment. You start finding that you're attracted to positive people versus the negative. Sometimes that can be a big step, when you find that you're no longer attracted to the bad boy, the bad girl, the victimizers. That there's no fun in being victimized. There's no fun in the high-risk relationships. There's no fun, or living in those shell of a relationships. It's no longer attractive to you. So when you cross that bridge, you really kind of break on through to the other side, and you're like, thank God I've got my feet on the ground, and thank God, I can surround myself with healing experiences. That's again why we really recommend, and we talk about in our tools here, are the recovery date. It's taking your liberated, your positive, healed self out for a quick date, just to see what you're attracted to on a healthy basis. So it's giving you a chance to get a better taste for what the healthy part of you is attracted to, and then exercising that healthy part of yourself and giving it, some emotional getting out of the sea legs, even though it might become very scary. And you go on a recovery date. In other words, the healthy part of you, the positive, because it's going to want to backslide. It's going to want to be like a knee-jerk reaction to go back and to be attracted to. But once you get some time, baby, you are never going to go back. You're going to be, thank God, it's better to be on your own than surrounded by the negative hackers who are trying to bring out or define you by the worst, versus defining you by your best. And that best core should always, always be exercised and in touch with your healthy relationships. So you really need to get to that core. It's that vision of yourself, just like Michelangelo with the slate of marble with David. You need to constantly keep that vision of yourself. You really might need to, I am keeping a positive vision for myself through this moment. Moment by moment, I am following my heart. So it's constantly keeping that in mind and keeping that in heart, which will help you with the positive orderly direction thinking and liberating you emotionally and cognitively and behaviorally, so you're really on the path. And the more traction you get, the better your perspective will be. This is your buddy, Peace and Harmony, with you here today, and I hope that these videos do help. Please share and please subscribe for more great tools, videos, discussion, and support.